you're a free man, but others that you care about obviously are not free.
I'm relieved that the jury found it in my favor. I don't agree with their findings with the others, people I care about, and they're incarcerated.
As those verdicts they were preparing to read those verdicts, what's your mindset? Did you believe at that point they were going to come back with a not guilty verdict?
I was hopeful that they were coming back with not guilty verdicts. It's probably the most excruciating, pressure-filled 30 seconds because that's all it took of your life. In that moment, you don't know whether you're going home. You know, I drove there, expect to drive home, and I did. But as each one came down, you heard. I mean, Alex went first, and you know, your heart goes out. And I was probably worried most about everyone else more than myself. I care about those folks.
So you hear their verdicts being read?
Yes.
And they're being found guilty of various charges?
Yes.
You think that's happening to you?
You know, that's a good question. I think I had to look over at Mike, and I had to look at the sheet itself to realize what their verdicts were, and then I realized I'm next. And I think I said, stand up. And I stood up, and I didn't know what they were going to say. It's a jury. It's a crapshoot.
You've been acquitted, but let me ask this question. Did you kill or take part in the killing of Craig Rideout?
No, I did not.
Did you assist in disposing of the body or any of the evidence?
No, I did not.
On the radio today and on television today, the sheriff was making the rounds, saying that he's absolutely convinced that you were at the scene when Craig Rideout was killed. What do you say to that?
If I was at the scene, then they would have had evidence of that. They didn't prove their case.
The most damning evidence during the trial against you are probably the photo and the video of you and Laura coming out of that Walmart on the night of July 19th. It's 9:50 p.m. approximately. Why are you buying a tarp and bungee cords and drain cleaner at that Walmart?
Oh my goodness. We were moving. I mean, that's a fact. You know, we shop. We have a lot of kids. We had kids at a campfire that night. They thought that we were on the wagon train to the west, and they would never see their friends. They were less than helpful, and they were supposed to be helping us pack. So I knew I had a couple things to do. If you go, I did have a clog sink. I still have a clog sink upstairs that won't go away. And I had stuff that I needed for this move. I had a bunch of things, and not just bungee cords. I had some painting to do. And so you're going through a Walmart, and you're saying, oh gosh, I need this. What do I need? And you grab this, you grab that, you grab bug spray, sorry. And then we're going to go to get something to eat, and then end up going home instead.
Why that Walmart on Hudson Avenue? There's lots of Walmarts closer to your home.
Not on the way from dropping kids off. We dropped kids off at New Wickham because that's a court order thing that we had to do. And I was actually going to be going up toward. We were going to go to Bar Louie off of 104, and I said, well, we'll hit the Walmart in Webster. I couldn't find it, so I said I knew that was on the way. So we go on the way, stop, and there you go.
How then do you explain that those items, or identical items, were used in the cover-up of Craig's death?
I wouldn't say identical, but I mean, those were available. Once I got home, they were at home. You know. And there's some of the things that they found weren't identical. I mean, they talked about bungee cords on a bed. Those were not the same type of bungee cords. We needed more things. I mean, I had tons of bungee cords at home. I needed long ones for the foosball table, which is in North Carolina now.
Yeah. A few hours later, Colin spotted at another Walmart buying gloves and a shovel. He gets into the back seat. Obviously, there's others in the car. Are you in that car?
I don't know who's in that car, other than Colin and a driver. I mean, I couldn't even, I saw the video in the evidence room, and I couldn't even tell what car that was. In fact, it was interesting, the sheriffs in their own PowerPoint presentation first called it a Fusion, and then they called it a Chrysler, and it looked like a Honda. I couldn't tell at all.
So you didn't know who that car belonged to,
No.
or who might have been in that car.
Oh, we know Colin was in the car.
Right. The only DNA that linked you to any of these crimes is your DNA and one pair of the gloves that were found in the trunk of the car that Colin and Alex were driving. How do you explain that DNA, or how did you during the course of this trial?
I think that DNA, look, they took a bunch of laundry and threw it against the wall and saw it, tried to see what stuck. I mean, for 25 years I've been part of this family. I mean, my wife and I have donated clothes back and forth. Some of the clothes that they find could have been my clothes as hand-me-downs. All of that, jumbling around and moving back and forth. I think that DNA moves. I think that that's what you saw. And every one of those DNA samples they had was a mix. There was no, this is so-and-so. And interestingly enough, with that, if they had taken enough reference samples, they could have found you on there too. You know, they can only match. If you only have 4 people to match from, those are the only ones you can get a match. So that's what happened, I think.
Do you know who killed Craig Rideout?
I do not. I don't think anyone knows. I don't even think the jury knows. In fact, if you ask, the prosecution never said who did it. In fact, it wasn't fair because they'd let the jury try to figure it out. And it's the prosecution's job to say who did it. And they never did that.
But nobody in the family said, either fessed up to it or said they knew who did it, or
I think he's on.
What's that?
We've got to be careful for appeal purposes for the other people involved. I don't want to answer that question.
Okay. Laura's attorneys said yesterday that they were unable to be as aggressive on the defense as they may have liked to have been, intimating that she was, in a sense, protecting her sons. What does that tell you?
As a mother, and everyone's heard the testimony and they talked about finger pointing and that. It was a safe bet to point at her because she can never point back. What mother's going to throw their kids under the bus? She's not going to do it. So I don't think she's covering for anyone. It's unseemly, and she acted accordingly.
But he kind of gave the impression that that's the defense they would have taken had it not been her own son.
I think any good attorney would do what they need to do to put reasonable doubt, but this is a family. You know, I think it was difficult for the entire legal team to sit there and look, because these are people that care about each other. There's no rift here. What this is people in a tough, difficult situation doing the best they possibly can. And
do you think Laura was involved in any way in this plot?
no, I know where Laura was.
Where was she?
She was at home with me.
But she's clearly involved in the cleanup of the crime scene.
I think on that point, again, for her appeal purposes, I don't think we're on that issue.
Okay.
I mean, we got to be careful for her appeal on one end, but it might be held as a witness.
The question I was going to ask, and you
I
tell me if
know.
you can ask it or answer it or not, but if she's not in any way involved in the cover-up or anything, why not just call police when you discover there's a body?
Again, I think I would not want to answer that just because I think there's appeal issues that she's going to raise, and I don't want to have to time yourself into a statement in case they don't want to call you to control or something. So, sorry for that.
Okay,
I let us you slide on it, but I got
that's fine. Let's talk about the relationship between Craig and Laura. Obviously, we heard that their divorce was contentious. What was going on between them?
That was what was confusing. You know, Craig's divorce attorney was contentious. The divorce itself was not. There was a signed separation agreement that allowed Laura to go in custody of the 2 younger kids that Craig did delayed on signing, actually. There was an email to that effect. I don't know why. But that wasn't preventing anyone from going. It's not what we wanted, but we were going to use some of the newer techniques for visitation, FaceTime, summer breaks, going back and forth. And in fact, you know, we were going to have this new life. Now, with a lot of kids, you know, there's 11 children in this whole thing. And so I wouldn't have called it contentious in that respect. In fact, she was Laura was always able to separate the behavior from the person. She never, in those years, all those years that I've known her, showed this any type of animosity towards Craig. She said sometimes it was like the crazy uncle in the corner. You have to deal with them occasionally, but things are fine, and it was time to move on.
But was there an issue of the custody of the two younger children? You know, as the story goes, you folks were moving down to North Carolina, and the supposed issue here was that you weren't able to take the two younger ones because you had custody.
It's not true. It's not real. I mean, it's first of all, it's an unsigned agreement, but the idea behind it, that we knew the kids were going to stay here. That didn't prevent anyone from going, and then they would have been able. I mean, the courts have changed in how they handle that, and they allow these long distance type custody arrangements, and that's what we were planning on doing. And I mean, the kids were aware of it, and that was, they were in Penfield schools. They were going to go to Penfield. We would see them in the summers, and for vacations. I mean, there is no good custody solution that exists in our court system today, because it's about equitable. They're trying to be equitable, but it's just invasive for everybody, not just this divorce, any divorce. Because now you're dealing with logistics, especially with this many children, going back and forth, and kids suddenly get their own schedules, and you get your own schedules. I don't know how anyone goes through any kind of divorce with any level of sanity.
How would you describe Craig's relationship with his children? Obviously, he had custody of the younger ones, but it sounds as if Colin did have some issues with it.
I think if I had to give one true word about Craig and his relationship with his children, it's ambivalence.
How so?
Well, I guess questions that I ask when you look at fathers. If you have a child, would you put them in daycare for 12 hours a day? Do you go to your kids' soccer games? Do you fund their soccer games? Do you go to sporting events? Do you support them? Do you do everything you can? I never saw Craig at any of those events. He didn't even know he didn't even know his daughter was in crew. He didn't know his son was proposing to his fiancée at a crew event. He wasn't even aware of that. How are you not aware of that? So uninvolved, ambivalent.
And was there some growing tension with him and Colin?
Not that I could see. Colin had a life ahead of him. Colin was getting married. He was looking forward to going to Detroit, they were making the decision between Detroit and North Carolina, and they have a future together. That's what they were doing, and there's some school things that he needed to do, and that's what I saw.
Just going back quickly, you said you don't believe any of these other co-defendants had any involvement. How then do you explain all the blood on their clothes?
I can't explain that.
Question that at this point, just because they still have appeals.
Yeah.
You asked a lot of good questions.
Was there ever any discussion in the family, serious or not, that things would be easier if Craig wasn't around?
Craig, I'll give you my point of view, is Craig represented babysitting every other weekend. Laura and I could go out. He had the kids. We get to go out and do some things, which is very different. Having my own kids, you have them all the time. Here you get free babysitting. And there was a point in time that he was going to help Laura out financially once the separation agreement's going on there. So there was some positive benefits. So in my life and in our life, when we weren't having to do a kid exchange, Craig was just a non-entity as far as we were concerned. It was nothing we really thought about. For the last year, that's all we seem to have thought about. But during all this,
What was your personal interaction with him?
cordial. I mean, we've known each other for a long time. I mean, Craig was a war gamer. He sent me an email when he found out Laura was over and said, "I'm glad that she's happy and that she's found a place. If it was anybody, she was happy that he was happy that it was me." He gave me his blessing in that, and he thanked me for taking care of her.
Were you friends with him at one time? Would you consider
I would
close
say
friendship, or?
I would say we were friends. I lived in the apartment above him in 1992. That's when I met. That's when I met him. Actually, I met Laura first, and they. Yeah, I would say that we were friends. We were couples. We did things together, and always had. I mean, up until the divorce component, he would bring the kids over. They trick-or-treated in my neighborhood when they were at Halloween parties. And they were back and forth. I would say when Laura told Craig, because she played it for me on a tape, when she told Craig that she wanted a divorce, he says, "Do you think that means that PG and I can have a stronger relationship?" He wasn't even worried about the divorce part, I guess.
This is kind of a sensitive question, but during this investigation, there were whispers about your wife's death and whether that should be investigated. What were your thoughts and feelings about that?
My wife died struggling with alcohol. She died from an esophageal hemorrhage, which means she bled out from the inside as a complication to cirrhosis of the liver. Now, I don't think that's anybody's business, but I know they opened it up again and found the exact same thing. Those are somebody else's issues, and I'd like to keep them that way. I'd like to keep them private. But that's a public record. That document is in evidence, and that's what it is. So,
did it bother you that they were going back and doing that?
Yeah, why wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, this had nothing to do with her. This is, sometimes we try to create news out of events that aren't newsworthy. Yes, this is a big case and it's newsworthy, but we look for things. Oh, it's a year to the date of this, or oh, we went and found that, and there were a lot of sensational articles that you can, the guy who makes money is the headline writer. That's what sells papers. I mean, you're selling advertising. You know what? Great, it plays for advertising, but as far as being a personal thing, that was intrusive, and I wasn't pleased.
Just a couple more. I know you got to get running here. You met with Laura today in the jail.
I did.
What was her mindset?
She was smiling. She's shocked. I think that's a good word for it, shocked. She needs some reading material. She's safe and hopeful.
Hopeful of what?
Getting out.
You're a free man, but there's a real possibility that she may never see the outside of a prison. Have you discussed what happens going forward?
We have. We've had a lot of time together, so it wasn't something that we dwelt on. And there are some things that you do. Laura, doesn't matter, will always be in my life. Will always be a friend, whether she's incarcerated or not. She's more than a friend. But, there's 25 to life is one of the sentences that's out there, and I think that makes me 76 and her 71, something like that. So maybe we have a retirement home together.
You've had a close relationship with the Rideout family for a lot of years. This is a family that's now torn apart. How do the other kids recover from something like this?
Well, we know where Colin is. Andrew's in the military. He's in the Marines. So he has his life. Alex will be out hopefully sooner than later, and he has a bright future ahead of him. He's a very smart individual, and I think that he's really come on his own in the last few years. Elizabeth's going to college. Julia's finishing school, and she's in high school. The two little ones have flourished out with her sisters. They have stability in their life, and they are now what I would say happy children, which they weren't at one point, and now they are. So I don't see that the kids have lost anything there other than they miss their mom.
Well, they lost their father too. Was that not a loss?
I didn't see those kids shed a tear anyway. Not one of them.
Where do you go from here?
Where do I go from here?
Will you leave town? Are you going to stay in town?
I don't know. It's one day at a time. I know that I have some things to clear up. The sheriffs still have my car. I'd like to get that back. It's on Mike. And we see what tomorrow brings. Because it's the most unique thing that you've done in 6 weeks. It's a job, and on top of the other job that I have, but it's a job every day. You get up, you come down to court. Laura and I had somewhere to be. We smiled, and the press had made a note that why are we smiling in the courtroom? We were doing something together, and every day we knew we were going to go back home, except for those last 5. Those deliberation days, you go down there and you don't know whether you're going to go home. One of us did, and Laura was happy for that, and one of us well, 3 of us haven't. But when we talk about each other, what the plan is, I don't know what tomorrow will bring. An asteroid could hit the Earth.
Last question for you. If you weren't involved in this, and Laura and Colin and Alex were not involved in this, who could have been involved in this?
Yeah, no,
I'm not going to speculate. I can't speculate.